The sand was still hot from the afternoon sun when the bullets started flying. February 26, 1991, Kuwait City, the final day of Desert Storm. Lieutenant William Garrison crouched behind a burning Humvee, his Ranger battalion pinned down by Iraqi Republican Guard forces, making their last desperate stand. 28 years old already, a veteran of Panama Garrison had learned to read the rhythm of combat like a musician reads sheet music. And right now the rhythm said they were in serious trouble. "Bull, we got wounded over here," Staff Sergeant Thomas Reeves shouted from 30 yards away, dragging two Rangers into the crater of what used to be a bank building. At 35, Reeves was one of the old men of the unit, a father, a soldier who talked about his 4-year-old son Jameson every chance he got, the kind of man who showed wallet photos during mail call. Garrison made the calculation every combat leader learns to make. Stay put, lose wounded. Move now, probably die. Definitely die. He moved anyway. The sprint across open ground took maybe 8 seconds. Felt like 8 hours. Sand kicked up around his boots. The crack of AK-47 rounds split the air close enough to feel the heat. He dove into the crater just as an RPG obliterated what was left of the Humvee. "Jesus, Bull, you got a death wish." Reeves grabbed his vest, pulling him deeper into cover. "Yeah, and you're not helping me achieve it." Garrison checked the two wounded Rangers. One had a through and through to the thigh, survivable. The other had taken shrapnel to the chest. Not good, not good at all. That's when Garrison heard it. The distinct whistle of incoming mortar fire. Time does strange things in moments like these. Expands, contracts, sometimes stops altogether. Garrison looked up, saw the arc of the shell, did the math on where it would land. The math said right on top of them. The math said they were done. Thomas Reeves must have done the same math. "Tell Jameson." Reeves didn't finish the sentence. Just lunged, grabbed Garrison by the vest, threw him 15 feet across the crater with strength born from pure father-desperate determination. The mortar hit where Garrison had been standing. When Garrison's ears stopped ringing and his vision cleared from the concussive blast, he crawled back through the smoke, found Thomas Reeves lying in the sand. Shrapnel had torn through his right side. Too much blood. Way too much blood. Garrison pressed his hands against the wounds, but it was like trying to stop a river. "Medic, medic," Reeves grabbed his wrist, weak, shaking. "Promise me, don't talk, save your strength. Promise me, tell my son I died for something that mattered." Garrison's throat tightened. "You're not dying. You hear me, you're not." "Promise, goddammit." Reeves coughed. More blood. "Tell Jameson, his father died, protecting his brothers." The light was already leaving Reeves' eyes. That terrible dimming that every combat veteran recognizes. The moment when a person becomes a memory. "I swear it, Tommy. I'll watch over him. I swear on my life." Thomas Reeves smiled. Actually smiled. "Good enough. Bull." Then his hand went slack. Garrison stayed there in the sand holding his friend, even after the medics arrived. Even after someone gently pulled him away. Even after the shooting stopped and the war ended and everyone else moved on to celebration. Because some promises weigh heavier than others. And this one would follow William Garrison for the next 34 years. Devil's Ridge, Montana. Present day. The coffee was strong enough to strip paint, exactly how Elena Blackwell liked it. She stood on the wraparound porch of her cabin, steam rising from the chipped ceramic mug into the bitter February air. At 29, she possessed the lean, weathered build of someone who had spent years surviving in conditions that broke weaker people. Her dark hair shoulder length now, and free from military regulations, caught the pre-dawn wind as she scanned the valley below, through instincts that 3 years of exile hadn't managed to erase. The cabin sat perched on a granite ledge, 8,000 feet up, overlooking terrain so remote it barely qualified for inclusion on most maps. Elena had chosen this location specifically for its isolation. 3 escape routes, clear fields of fire in every direction, enough warning time to disappear if anyone came looking for the disgraced Marine who had once been considered among the Corps' most promising snipers. Her breath formed small clouds as she sipped the coffee, a habit retained from countless pre-dawn missions in places the Pentagon preferred not to acknowledge publicly. The Barrett M82A1 rifle leaning against the cabin wall remained within arm's reach. She hadn't fired it at anything more threatening than mountain lions in over 2 years. Some habits died harder than others. Movement below caught her eye, a figure emerging from the tree line moving with the deliberate pace of someone who understood mountain survival. William Garrison, 66 years old now. using a cane for his bad knee, but still carrying himself like the ranger he'd been 3 decades ago. "Coffee's hot if you want some," Elena called down. Garrison climbed the final stretch to her porch, breathing steady despite the altitude and stomach descent. The man moved with practiced efficiency, his body bearing the scars of service that most civilians would never understand. The morning light caught the silver in his close-cropped hair. "Figured you'd be up," Garrison said, accepting the mug she handed him. "Heard something last night. Sounded like military helicopters. Multiple aircraft. Heading northeast toward Devil's Canyon." Elena's posture straightened slightly. Old instincts responding. "Navy. That'd be my guess. Flying low and fast. Pre-dawn timing." Garrison studied the distant peaks. Unusual for training exercises. They sat in the comfortable silence of two people who had learned to communicate without excessive words. Garrison had never asked about Elena's military service beyond what she'd volunteered. She'd never pressed him for details about the missions that had left him with a pronounced limp and old shrapnel scars visible on his forearms. Their friendship had developed through mutual respect for privacy and shared understanding of what it meant to carry invisible wounds from service most people couldn't comprehend. 3 years ago, Garrison had found Elena stumbling through a blizzard, drunk, hypothermic, a loaded Sig Sauer in her jacket pocket and death in her eyes. He'd carried her back to his cabin, sobered her up, and made her a promise. "I lost people in the war," he'd said. "Good people. I won't lose another soldier. Not on my watch." He'd been her anchor ever since, teaching her survival skills that went beyond what the Marine Corps had provided, giving her purpose when purpose seemed impossible. Never judging, never pushing, just being there. "You ever miss it?" Garrison asked, eventually nodding toward the Barrett. "The certainty of knowing exactly what your mission was, what success looked like, who you could trust to have your back." Elena considered the question while studying the distant peaks where those helicopters had disappeared. "I miss the clarity, knowing the enemy was out there, not in here." She tapped her temple. "Out there, you solve problems with skill and training. In here," she paused, "in here the enemy knows all your weaknesses." Garrison nodded slowly. He'd been there himself. The invisible enemy that followed you home from the war. "The politics," Elena continued, her jaw tightening. "I don't miss the politics, especially when the mission parameters change after you're already committed. When the intelligence turns out to be fabricated. When your own command structure becomes the enemy." She left the sentence unfinished. But Garrison understood. Syria 3 years ago, the memory came unbidden, as memories like these it always did. Elena lying prone on a rooftop in Aleppo, scope pressed to her eye, controlling her breathing in the way that had become second nature. 26 years old. Gunnery sergeant. 8 confirmed tours. 73 confirmed kills. The Marine Corps' rising star in the scout sniper community. Her spotter, Corporal Davis, worked the rangefinder. Winds shifting, 2.3 miles per hour from the west. "Copy." Elena made minute adjustments to her scope. The target was 1,700 meters away, within her capability range but challenging enough to demand absolute focus. The target, a man identified by intelligence as Khalid al-Rashid, coordinator of weapons shipments to 3 different terrorist organizations. Elena had studied his file for weeks, memorized his face, understood his patterns. This was what she'd trained for. Surgical removal of threats to save American lives. Her radio crackled. Captain Robert Thorne's voice, her commanding officer. "Phantom, you are cleared hot. Take the shot when ready." Elena's finger found the trigger with practiced ease. Breath control, heartbeat at slowing to 42 beats per minute, the world narrowing to crosshairs and target. She fired. The .50 caliber round traversed 1,700 meters in just over 2 seconds. Perfect shot. Center mass. The target dropped. "Target eliminated," Davis confirmed through binoculars. "Outstanding work, Phantom." Thorne's voice came back. "Return to base for debrief." Elena had felt that familiar mixture of satisfaction and weight. Another mission complete. Another threat neutralized. Another night of wondering if the world was actually safer, or if she was just killing people in an endless cycle that never achieved anything lasting. She'd packed up her equipment and headed back to base, not knowing her life was about to detonate like an IED. The CIA officer had been waiting in the briefing room, tall, angry, flanked by 2 people in suits who screamed federal authority. "Gunnery Sergeant Blackwell, you just held one of our most valuable assets in the Middle East, a deep cover operative who spent 4 years infiltrating terrorist networks. Congratulations. You've compromised an operation worth 8 years of work and approximately $40 million. Elena's world had tilted. That's impossible. I had positive identification. Intelligence confirmed. Your intelligence, the CIA officer interrupted, was deliberately falsified, and we want to know by whom. The investigation had been swift, brutal. Military lawyers picking apart every decision she'd made, every communication she'd received, every step of mission protocol. The evidence pointed one direction: Elena had exceeded her authority, ignored proper verification channels, acted as a rogue operator. The truth buried beneath layers of classified documents and political maneuvering was different. Captain Robert Thorne had been selling intelligence to foreign buyers for 18 months. When Elena accidentally discovered encrypted communications on his laptop during a routine equipment check, Thorne had panicked. He'd fed her false coordinates, set her up to kill a CIA asset, then orchestrated the investigation to paint her as the rogue operator, the perfect scapegoat. Elena had tried to fight it, presented evidence, demanded her own investigation of Thorne's activities. But Thorne had connections, allies in positions that mattered. And the Marine Corps, faced with choosing between believing a captain with 15 years of service or a gunnery sergeant with inconvenient accusations, chose political convenience. Her discharge had been swift, quiet, dishonorable, career destroyed, reputation shattered. 8 years of service reduced to a footnote about an operator who couldn't follow orders. Elena Blackwell had ceased to exist as far as the Marine Corps was concerned. The satellite phone inside the cabin began ringing with the distinctive tone reserved for emergency contacts. Elena rose quickly, coffee mug abandoned on the railing. She'd given that number to exactly 3 people: Garrison, her former team medic who'd remained loyal despite her disgrace, and Colonel Rebecca Sterling, her former commanding officer at Quantico, who'd been forced to sign Elena's discharge papers while privately acknowledging the injustice. Elena grabbed the phone from its charging station, recognized the area code. Military communication. Blackwell? Elena, this is Rebecca Sterling. The colonel's voice carried a strain that immediately put Elena on high alert. They hadn't spoken in 6 months. Sterling wouldn't be calling now unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. I need you to listen carefully. Sterling continued without preamble. There's a situation developing in your area that requires immediate assistance from someone with your specific skill set. Elena felt her pulse increase, old instincts responding. What kind of situation? SEAL team conducting classified operations in Devil's Canyon. 24 operators. They walked into what appears to be a coordinated ambush by a large force of well-equipped hostiles. Current intelligence suggests they're facing over 150 fighters with heavy weapons, organized positions, and extensive knowledge of the terrain. The implications crystallized immediately. A SEAL team wouldn't be caught in that kind of trap unless they'd been specifically set up. Intelligence failure, communication compromise, outright betrayal, the same kind of factors that had destroyed her own military career. How many casualties? Elena asked, already calculating tactical possibilities. Unknown but mounting. They've established defensive positions in an abandoned mining complex, but they're surrounded and taking effective fire from multiple elevated positions. Weather conditions prevent air support or extraction until dawn. Elena closed her eyes, visualizing the terrain around Devil's Canyon. She'd hiked every trail, climbed every ridge, mapped every tactical advantage in that area during her 3 years of self-imposed exile. The mining complex Sterling mentioned was a death trap if someone controlled the surrounding high ground. What about other assets in the area? Every qualified sniper within 300 miles is either deployed overseas, killed in the initial ambush, or pinned down with the main force. Sterling paused. Elena could hear the weight of command responsibility in the silence. Elena, these men are going to die unless someone with your capabilities can provide immediate assistance. Through the window, Elena could see Garrison watching her with patient attention, understanding that important conversations often determine the course of lives. Colonel, you know my current status, Elena said carefully. If I engage hostile forces, I'll be operating without official sanction, military support, or legal protection. If something goes wrong, Sterling interrupted, her voice carrying both urgency and something that sounded like personal plea. 24 American servicemen are going to die in the next few hours unless someone intervene. I can't order you to act, but I can tell you that you're the only person in the region with the skills and equipment necessary to make a difference. Elena looked out at the mountains where she'd spent 3 years hiding from a world that had betrayed her trust. Those same mountains now contain Navy SEALs facing death because of the same kind of intelligence failures and political maneuvering that had cost her everything she'd once valued. The choice seemed clear, even though the consequences remained unpredictable. Send me the tactical situation and grid coordinates, Elena said, her voice taking on the professional tone that had been dormant for 3 years. I'll need current intelligence on enemy positions, weather forecasts, and communication protocols for contact with the SEAL team. Elena, Sterling said, her voice carrying a mixture of relief and concern, this is completely voluntary. No one will question your decision if you choose not to get involved. Elena walked to the porch where Garrison waited. The Barrett rifle seemed to be waiting as well, like a faithful partner, ready to resume a relationship that had been interrupted by circumstances beyond either of their control. Colonel, send the intelligence package. I'll establish overwatch positions and begin target assessment within the hour. As she ended the call, Garrison stood and moved to the railing, his gaze fixed on the distant peaks where American servicemen were fighting for their lives against overwhelming odds. Guess that answers your question about what direction you're headed, he said quietly. Elena began calculating equipment loads, route planning, tactical considerations that would determine whether 24 SEALs lived or died before sunset. Time to find out if 3 years of exile taught me anything useful, she said, reaching for the Barrett with movements that felt like greeting an old friend. But before she could begin preparations, Sterling's voice came back over the satellite phone, now carrying information that changed everything. Elena, there's something else you need to know, something I should have told you first. Elena's hand froze on the rifle stock. Sterling's tone had shifted from operational urgency to something more personal, more dangerous. The person who set up that SEAL team, who planned this entire ambush. It's Captain Robert Thorne. The name hit Elena like a physical blow. Robert Thorne, her former commanding officer. The man who had framed her for killing a CIA asset. The man who'd been court-martialed for selling intelligence to foreign buyers. The man who'd orchestrated her professional destruction to cover his own crimes. Thorne is second in command for Harrison Wolf's organization, Sterling continued. He knows you, Elena. He knows how you think, how you operate. This entire situation, there's intelligence suggesting it might be a trap. Not just for the SEALs, for you. Elena's grip tightened on the Barrett. 3 years ago, when she'd reported Thorne's illegal activities, he'd responded by feeding false intelligence and setting her up to kill an undercover asset. He'd destroyed her career, her reputation, nearly her life. And now he was out there in those mountains commanding mercenaries and killing American servicemen. Then he's going to learn something. Elena said, her voice cold and steady. I'm not the same Marine he betrayed 3 years ago. I'm the ghost he created. Garrison stepped closer, placing a weathered hand on her shoulder. If you walk into that canyon, kid, you might not walk out. Thorne knows your playbook. He'll have planned for you. Elena looked at the old ranger, seeing the concern mixed with something else. Pride, perhaps. Understanding. Those SEALs didn't choose to be in that situation, Elena said. Someone else made that decision for them. Same as happened to me. Garrison was quiet for a moment, then spoke with the weight of old memories. The team leader. His name is Jameson Reeves. Elena turned, seeing something in Garrison's expression she'd never seen before. Recognition. Pain. Ancient guilt. Reeves as in Thomas Reeves' son, Garrison confirmed. 37 years old. SEAL Team 7. His father was the man who died saving my life in Kuwait. February 26, 1991. The pieces connected in Elena's mind. The letters Garrison wrote every year on the same date. The box of unsent correspondence in his cabin. The photographs of a young ranger and an older sergeant standing together in desert camouflage, both smiling despite the war around them. You've been watching over him, Elena said, all these years. From a distance, I sent him letters on his birthday, told him about his father, about the man Thomas Reeves was, but I never had the courage to meet him face to face. How do you look a man in the eye and tell him you're alive because his father died in your place? Garrison turned away, staring at the distant mountains where Jameson Reeves was fighting for his life against an enemy that had been waiting for exactly this moment. Tommy made me promise, Garrison said. Made me swear I'd watch over his boy. I never contacted Jameson directly. Never reached out. Felt like I didn't deserve to. I lived. Tommy died. That debt, he trailed off. Elena understood immediately. This wasn't just about saving SEALs. This was about Garrison's 34-year-old promise to a dying friend, a debt he'd carried like stones in his pockets. Then today we pay that debt, Elena said. Together. Garrison looked at her, something shifting in his weathered features. I can't make that climb, kid. Bad knee. I'd slow you down, get you killed. You don't need to climb. You need to be my eyes and ears from here. You know that terrain better than anyone. You can guide me, help me anticipate Thorne's moves. He trained me, but you trained soldiers for 20 years. You know tactics he's never even considered. Garrison nodded slowly. I can set up overwatch from the lower ridge, monitor communications, provide tactical guidance. He paused. And I've got something for you. He disappeared into the cabin, returning moments later with a weathered brass compass and a combat knife in a leather sheath. Both bore the marks of hard use across decades. These belonged to Tommy Reeves. He gave me the compass the night before that last mission, said it always brought him home. The knife, Garrison's voice caught. The knife he used to cut me free from a vehicle after we hit an IED in '89, saved my life with it before he saved my life with his body. Elena took the items, feeling the weight of legacy and sacrifice that transcended her own troubled history. I'll bring them back, she said, and I'll bring Jameson home. That's a promise. Inside her cabin, Elena moved with mechanical precision through preparations she hadn't performed in 3 years. Each piece of equipment held specific purpose weight calculated against tactical value. The Barrett M82A1 received first attention. She field-stripped the rifle completely, inspecting every component with the eye of someone whose life had once depended on mechanical reliability. Cleaned, lubricated, reassembled. The muscle memory was still there, buried beneath 3 years of civilian existence, but instantly accessible. Scope adjustment came next. She'd kept the rifle zeroed through monthly maintenance sessions, but mountain weather could affect precision instruments. She made minute calibration adjustments, accounting for altitude, temperature, differential, barometric pressure. Ammunition selection required careful consideration. She had 47 rounds of match-grade .50 caliber ammunition, each cartridge capable of eliminating targets at distances exceeding 2 kilometers under optimal conditions. Not optimal conditions today. Heavy snow predicted. Wind speeds increasing throughout the day. She sorted the rounds by manufacturing batch, selecting the most consistent loads for the most critical shots. Garrison watched from the doorway as she assembled her gear with methodical care. How much territory are we talking about? He asked. Devil's Canyon covers roughly 12 square miles of granite cliffs, abandoned mining tunnels, and alpine forest. Elena replied, sliding ceramic trauma plates into her tactical vest. Multiple elevation changes, limited visibility, perfect terrain for coordinated ambush tactics. Her hands moved through equipment selection without conscious thought. Rangefinder, night vision scope, climbing gear, emergency medical supplies, water purification tablets, high-energy rations calculated for extended operations. Total pack weight, 63 pounds. Manageable for someone who had maintained rigorous physical conditioning despite exhaustion. The tablet on her table buzzed with incoming data transmission. Elena connected to Sterling's encrypted channel, downloading classified intelligence that painted a tactical picture worse than the initial assessment suggested. 24 Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 7 had infiltrated Devil's Canyon, targeting Harrison Wolf, an international arms dealer whose organization supplied advanced weaponry to terrorist networks across 3 continents. Intelligence indicated Wolf was conducting a major transaction involving stolen military hardware. The operation had been planned as standard capture or eliminate. SEAL teams would establish overwatch positions, identify high-value targets, and either extract Wolf alive or eliminate him if extraction proved impossible. But Harrison Wolf had earned his reputation through 15 years of surviving military and law enforcement attempts to neutralize his operations. The intelligence package revealed a man who possessed intimate knowledge of American special operations tactics. Elena studied satellite imagery showing the abandoned Copper Ridge mining complex, where the SEALs had established their defensive perimeter. 3 main buildings connected by covered walkways, surrounded by equipment yards and waste piles that provided some concealment but limited mobility. The complex sat in a natural bowl formation, surrounded by elevated positions that offered commanding views of every approach and escape route. Perfect killing ground if someone controlled the high ground. Her radio crackled with encrypted communication from Sterling. Phantom, this is Control. Current tactical update, SEAL team engaged for approximately 90 minutes. Casualties unknown, but intercepted communications indicate ammunition running critically low. Elena keyed her microphone. Control Phantom, request specific intelligence on enemy capabilities and positioning. Preliminary assessment suggests enemy force exceeding 150 personnel equipped with heavy machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, and coordinated communication systems. They've established overlapping fields of fire from multiple elevated positions around the mining complex. The tactical situation crystallized with uncomfortable clarity. The SEALs were trapped in a location with minimal cover, facing numerically superior forces that controlled every tactical advantage. Without immediate intervention, the outcome was predetermined. Control, what's the timeline for conventional support? Nearest available assets are minimum 8 hours out due to weather conditions and geographical constraints. You are the only qualified operator within effective range. Elena finished her equipment check and slung the Barrett rifle across her shoulder. The weight felt familiar, comfortable in a way that reminded her why she'd once been considered among the Marine Corps' most capable snipers. Garrison stepped aside as she moved toward the door. "You sure about this?" "No," Elena replied honestly. "But those men didn't choose to be in that situation. Someone else made that decision for them. Same as happened to me." She stepped into the February cold breath immediately visible in air that carried the sharp bite of incoming weather. Visibility was deteriorating rapidly as snow clouds moved down from higher elevations, which would complicate both her movement and target identification once she reached the canyon. The hike would require 3 hours of steady movement across terrain that challenged even experienced mountain climbers. Elena had made similar journeys during her exile, mapping every possible route for situations she'd hoped would never materialize. Now that theoretical preparation was about to face practical application. Garrison handed her Thomas Reeves' compass, the brass instrument worn smooth by years of use in combat zones across 2 decades. "Tommy gave this to me the night before that last mission," Garrison said quietly. "Said it always brought him home. Maybe it'll do the same for you." Elena took the compass, feeling the weight of legacy and sacrifice that transcended her own troubled history. "I'll bring them all home," she said, "and then I'll come back. That's a promise." She started down the mountain trail, the Barrett rifle across her back, and 47 rounds of match-grade ammunition that might be the difference between 24 families receiving their loved ones alive or receiving folded flags. Behind her, Garrison stood on the porch watching until she disappeared into the tree line. Then he walked inside, pulled out his old service radio, and began monitoring military frequencies. If Elena was walking into hell, he'd be watching from the only place he could. Listening, waiting, ready to call down whatever support he could find if things went wrong. Because that's what Rangers did. They never left anyone behind. Not in Kuwait, not in Panama, not in the dozen other places William Garrison had fought and bled and watched good people die. And not today in a forgotten Montana canyon where the ghosts of old wars were about to meet the reality of new ones. The mountain wind carried snow and the distant sound of automatic weapons fire as Elena moved through terrain she had mapped in solitude and was now crossing toward violence. 3 years of exile were ending. The ghost was going back to war. 6 miles northeast in the frozen heart of Devil's Canyon, Commander Jameson Reeves pressed his back against the concrete wall of the mining complex's main building, listening to automatic weapons fire that had continued almost without interruption for the past hour and 47 minutes. At 37, Jameson had led SEAL operations in 7 countries, but he had never faced a tactical situation that offered fewer viable options. Every principle of small unit tactics, every lesson learned through years of training and combat experience pointed toward the same inevitable conclusion. They were going to die here. "Razor, this is Hammer." Chief Petty Officer Sam Wilson's voice came through Jameson's earpiece with the calm professionalism that marked veteran operators even in the worst circumstances. "Alpha Team reports ammunition down to 60%. We've got wounded who need immediate medical attention." Jameson closed his eyes, running through possibilities that all led to the same endpoint. They were trapped in a location with minimal tactical advantages, facing an enemy that appeared to know exactly how American Special Operations units responded to coordinated attacks. "Hammer, consolidate Alpha Team with Bravo in Building 2. We need to reduce our defensive perimeter before they overrun individual positions." Through the shattered windows of the complex, Jameson could see muzzle flashes from at least 12 different elevated positions. The enemy had established interlocking fields of fire that made movement between buildings extremely hazardous while maintaining coordinated pressure that prevented the SEALs from establishing effective counterfire positions. Petty Officer Owen Cross, the team's medic, crouched beside 2 wounded SEALs in the corner of the room. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, applying pressure bandages to wounds that were bleeding faster than field medicine could address. "Razor, I need to get Hendricks and Campbell to better cover. They're losing blood faster than I can replace it." David Hendricks lay pale and still, his tactical vest dark with blood from shrapnel wounds across his chest and left arm. At 27, he'd survived operations in 4 combat theaters, but mountain warfare against professional opponents represented challenges that exceeded his previous experience in urban and desert environments. The tactical radio crackled with transmission from Firebase Echo, their supporting base of operations 40 miles southeast. Viper 7, this is Echo Base. Situation report. Jameson grabbed the handset, knowing his response would likely be the last official communication these men would send. Echo Base Viper 7, we are surrounded and heavily engaged by superior enemy forces. Estimated 150-plus hostiles with heavy weapons and coordinated tactics, requesting immediate air support and extraction. Viper 7 negative on immediate air support. Weather conditions prevent flight operations until dawn. You are on your own until morning. Dawn was still 5 hours away. Jameson looked around the room at men who had survived operations in some of the world's most dangerous locations. Warriors who had never faced a tactical situation this hopeless. They were running out of ammunition. Their wounded needed medical evacuation, and their defensive positions were being systematically eliminated by an enemy that seemed to anticipate every tactical decision they made. Petty Officer Ben Hughes, their communications specialist, looked up from his radio equipment with an expression that confirmed Jameson's worst fears. Sir, I'm picking up enemy communications in English. Professional terminology. Military protocols. These aren't just random fighters. Oh, they know exactly what they're doing. The implications hit Jameson immediately. Harrison Wolf hadn't just prepared for the possibility of American military intervention. He had recruited personnel specifically capable of countering SEAL team tactics. This wasn't an ambush. It was a carefully orchestrated trap designed to eliminate an entire American Special Operations unit. The question that gnawed at Jameson's mind was simple and terrifying. How had they known above the mining complex Captain Robert Thorne observed the engagement through military-grade binoculars from his position on Ridgeline Alpha? The former Marine officer had spent 18 months planning this operation, studying American Special Operations protocols and identifying weaknesses that could be exploited by a well-prepared defensive force. All positions, this is Overwatch. Thorne spoke into his tactical radio with clipped efficiency. SEAL team is consolidating into Building 2. Adjust fire concentration accordingly. Thorne had served alongside American Special Operations Forces for 6 years before discovering that patriotism paid significantly less than pragmatism. Harrison Wolf offered compensation that made military service seem like volunteer work, along with operational freedom that allowed Thorne to apply his tactical knowledge without political constraints or rules of engagement that favored enemy survival over mission completion. The mining complex below was illuminated by muzzle flashes from both sides, but the tactical mathematics were simple. American forces were depleting their ammunition reserves while defending static positions against mobile attackers who controlled every advantage. The outcome was predetermined unless something changed the fundamental equation. Boss, this is Position 3. The voice belonged to one of Thorne's squad leaders, a former British SAS operator named Collins. Americans are pulling back to secondary positions. Should we advance? Negative. Maintain current positions and continue coordinated fire. Let them exhaust their ammunition trying to defend positions that can't be held. Thorne understood American military psychology better than the Americans themselves. SEAL teams were trained to never surrender, never retreat, never abandon wounded teammates. Those admirable qualities became tactical liabilities when facing an enemy willing to exploit them systematically. The snow was intensifying, reducing visibility, and creating additional complications for both sides. But Thorne's forces held every significant advantage, including detailed knowledge of terrain features that American intelligence hadn't identified. Victory was simply a matter of patience and professional execution. In the mining complex, Jameson made a decision that violated every principle of SEAL team tactics, but offered their only chance of survival. He keyed his radio for transmission on emergency frequencies monitored by all American military units in the region. Any station, this is SEAL Team 7. We are trapped in Devil's Canyon and require immediate assistance from any available personnel. Grid coordinates follow. The transmission went out into the Montana wilderness. A desperate plea for help from operators who had never before found themselves in a situation where their training and equipment weren't sufficient to ensure mission success. The words felt like defeat in Jameson's mouth, but pride was a luxury reserved for those who had the ammunition to defend it. Elena heard that transmission through her portable radio as she navigated the treacherous approach to Devil's Canyon. The desperation in Jameson's voice cut through 3 years of self-imposed isolation and reminded her why she had worn the uniform in the first place. She increased her pace, pushing through snow and across rocky terrain that demanded complete attention to avoid fatal mistakes. 24 men were counting on her skills whether they knew it or not. Behind her, the safety and isolation of 3 years disappeared into the mountain wilderness. Ahead waited a tactical challenge that would either prove her capabilities or provide the final chapter in a military career that had been interrupted by betrayal and political expedience. Elena checked her watch and calculated time and distance remaining, 2 hours until she reached positions where her rifle could make a difference. The SEALs needed to survive that long. Her boots found purchase on ice-covered granite as she navigated a near vertical section of ridgeline that most climbers would consider impassable in daylight, let alone during a snowstorm. Each handhold required testing before committing her full weight, while the Barrett rifle's additional bulk shifted her center of gravity in ways that demanded constant adjustment. One mistake would send her tumbling 300 feet down a rocky slope that offered no chance of survival. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees in the past hour, turning her breath into frozen crystals that clung to her tactical face mask. Visibility deteriorated with each passing minute as the storm intensified, but Elena pressed forward using navigation skills learned during survival training that few Marines ever experienced. She had memorized this route during countless solo hiking expeditions, never imagining those peaceful explorations would become life-or-death reconnaissance for a combat mission. Her portable radio crackled with fragmentary transmissions from the valley below. American voices strained in desperate reporting ammunition counts that grew smaller with each update. The professional calm that marked experienced operators was beginning to crack under pressure that exceeded anything in their training or operational experience. "Bravo team, we need covering fire for casualty evacuation." The voice belonged to someone young, probably mid-20s, speaking with the controlled panic of a warrior facing his first real encounter with mortality. Elena scrambled across a field of loose shale, each step threatening to trigger a cascade that would reveal her position to anyone watching from below. The Barrett's weight made balance difficult, but she'd carried heavier loads through worse terrain in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. This was just Montana, just home, just mountains she'd explored 100 times. Except this time, people were dying while she climbed. In Building 2 of the mining complex, Petty Officer Kyle Brennan pressed his back against a concrete support pillar while automatic weapons fire shredded the air where his head had been moments earlier. At 23, Kyle was the newest member of SEAL Team 7 selected for this mission based on exceptional marksmanship scores and demonstrated ability to maintain composure under extreme stress. Those qualifications felt inadequate now as he watched Owen Cross struggling to treat David Hendricks' wounds with limited medical supplies. "Freshkin, you get eyes on the machine gun position at 10 o'clock. Jameson's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. But Kyle could detect underlying tension that acknowledged their deteriorating tactical situation. Kyle eased his rifle around the concrete pillar, using his scope to scan enemy positions that seemed to multiply with each observation. "I count 3 separate firing positions, all elevated, all with overlapping fields of fire. They've got us completely zeroed." The tactical implications were devastating. The enemy had established what military strategists called a kill zone, an area where every piece of cover could be engaged simultaneously from multiple directions. Moving between buildings meant exposure to coordinated fire that guaranteed casualties. Remaining in current positions meant slow elimination as ammunition supplies dwindled. Chief Sam Wilson crawled across the debris-covered floor to Jameson's position, his movement timed to coincide with their own suppressive fire. Razor Charlie team reports they're down to 40 rounds per man. Delta team lost Rodriguez when they tried to establish overwatch on the eastern approach. Kyle felt his chest tighten at the mention of Rodriguez. Miguel Rodriguez had been 29 years old, a father of 2. An operator who'd survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, only to die in the Montana wilderness because someone had sold them out. "Sir," Kyle said, his voice steady despite the fear that threatened to paralyze rational thinking. "What if we're not dealing with random fighters? What if someone planned this specifically to counter our tactics?" Jameson's expression confirmed what Kyle had begun to suspect. This wasn't an ambush. It was a carefully orchestrated trap designed by someone with intimate knowledge of American Special Operations procedures, someone who had once worn the same uniform they did. Elena reached a sheltered position behind a cluster of boulders approximately 2 miles from Devil's Canyon. Wind velocity had increased significantly, creating conditions that would challenge even expert marksmen attempting long-range precision fire. She removed her rifle from its protective case and began systematic preparation for engagement at distances that pushed the boundaries of what was tactically possible. Scope calibration required mathematical calculations that accounted for altitude, atmospheric pressure, wind speed, target movement. Each variable could mean the difference between eliminating a threat and revealing her position to enemy counter-snipers who would respond with overwhelming firepower. Her hands moved through familiar routines despite 3 years away from combat operations. Range estimation, wind assessment, breathing control exercises designed to slow her heart rate and eliminate tremor that could affect shot placement at extreme distances. The ritual was meditative, calming, a return to the fundamentals that had defined her professional identity before politics and betrayal had stripped everything away. "Control, this is Phantom," she transmitted on the encrypted frequency. "Approaching Overwatch positions. Request current intelligence on enemy disposition." Colonel Sterling's voice carried strain that suggested the situation had deteriorated since their last communication. "Phantom SEAL team reports multiple casualties and ammunition critically low. Enemy forces appear to be coordinating from elevated positions around the entire complex." Elena studied the valley through her spotting scope, identifying muzzle flashes and tactical positions that revealed enemy deployment patterns. What she observed confirmed her worst suspicions. This wasn't random resistance, but coordinated defense executed by personnel with military training comparable to American Special Operations Forces. Control observing approximately 20 separate firing positions, all elevated, all with clear sight lines to American positions. This is going to require sequential target elimination from multiple locations to avoid counter-sniper fire. Understood, Phantom. SEAL team commander estimates 30 minutes before their position becomes untenable. 30 minutes to eliminate enough threats to change the tactical balance in favor of 24 trapped Americans. Elena had achieved difficult shots under challenging conditions, but never with time constraints that meant failure would result in the systematic execution of an entire SEAL team. She began calculating approach routes to firing positions that would provide clear sight lines while offering concealment from enemy observation. The storm was both advantage and obstacle. Reduced visibility would hide her movement, but complicate target identification at the extreme ranges necessary to remain outside enemy response capabilities. In the mining complex, Jameson made the announcement that every operator had been dreading. "All teams prepare for coordinated breakout attempt. We cannot maintain these positions with current ammunition supplies." Kyle looked at David Hendricks, whose wounds were beyond Owen's ability to treat with available medical supplies. "What about the wounded?" "We carry them," Jameson replied with absolute certainty that marked leaders who had internalized the code at the deepest level. "Nobody gets left behind." The radio crackled with enemy transmissions in English, confirming Kyle's suspicion that they were facing former military personnel who understood American tactical psychology. Voices discussed American positions, ammunition estimates, casualty counts, with the professional detachment of experienced operators conducting systematic elimination of enemy forces. Kyle checked his ammunition count. 18 rounds remaining in a firefight that had already consumed more ordnance than most SEAL operations expended during entire deployments. Around him, teammates who had survived operations in 7 countries prepared for a desperate attempt to break through coordinated defensive positions that offered minimal chance of success. Petty Officer Tony Williams, the team's primary explosives expert, methodically checked his demolition charges. At 31, Williams had developed a reputation for remaining calm under pressure that would break lesser men. But even his steady hands showed slight tremor as he prepared charges that might be their last resort. "Fresh, you ready for this?" Chief Wilson asked, his voice carrying the calm acceptance of a warrior who had always known his profession might require the ultimate sacrifice. Kyle looked around the room at men who had become his brothers through shared danger and mutual dependence. David Hendricks bleeding but still gripping his rifle with determination that refused to acknowledge defeat. Owen Cross continuing to treat wounded despite exposure to enemy fire that could eliminate him at any moment. Jameson calculating tactical possibilities that all led to the same probable outcome. "Ready, Chief." They were professional warriors trained to accomplish impossible missions through superior skills, equipment, and determination. But they were also human beings facing an enemy that had neutralized every advantage through superior preparation and tactical positioning. Above them, Elena moved through mountain terrain toward positions where her rifle might provide the only chance these men had of surviving the next hour. 2 miles of treacherous approach remained between her current location and effective firing positions. Time was running out for 24 Americans who had never asked to be in this situation, never chosen to face an enemy that had been specifically prepared to counter their capabilities. Elena increased her pace, pushing through snow and across ice-covered rocks that demanded perfect balance while carrying equipment that could save lives if she reached the right position in time. Behind her, 3 years of safe isolation disappeared into the Montana wilderness. Ahead waited the most challenging tactical situation she had ever faced against an enemy that had been prepared specifically to eliminate American Special Operations capabilities. The storm was worsening, visibility was deteriorating, and 24 men were counting on skills she hadn't used since the mission that had destroyed her military career. Elena settled into a prone firing position on Eagle's Perch overlook. Her body formed perfect alignment behind the Barrett M82A1. Wind velocity measured 12 miles per hour from the northwest, requiring compensation calculations that had become instinctive during her 8 years as a Marine Scout sniper. Through her scope, the mining complex appeared as a tactical chessboard where American warriors were being systematically eliminated by an enemy that controlled every advantage. She began the pre-shot routine. Breathing slowed, heart rate decreased. The world narrowed until nothing existed except crosshairs and target and the mathematical relationship between trajectory and terminal ballistics. Range to primary target, 1,847 meters. Atmospheric conditions challenging but manageable. Wind compensation, 3/4 value left. Target assessment, enemy machine gun position on Ridgeline Alpha, currently engaging American forces with devastating effect. Elena's finger found the trigger with gentle pressure perfected through thousands of practice rounds and dozens of confirmed kills in 7 countries. The mathematics were complex, but the execution had to be flawless. One shot to announce her presence and change the tactical equation. Miss in her position would be compromised without achieving any tactical advantage. In the mining complex below, Jameson raised his hand to signal the coordinated breakout attempt that represented their only remaining chance of survival. Around him, 22 remaining SEALs prepared for movement that would expose them to coordinated fire from multiple directions. The wounded would be carried, equipment would be abandoned, and survival would depend on speed, surprise, and the desperate courage of warriors who had never learned how to surrender. On my mark, Jameson whispered into his tactical radio. Alpha team breaks north toward the equipment yard. Bravo team provides covering fire, then follows 30 seconds behind. Charlie team maintains overwatch until both elements reach secondary positions. Petty Officer Fisher, leading what remained of Alpha team after Rodriguez's death, checked his weapon one final time. 8 men under his command, down from the original 12 who'd infiltrated the valley 6 hours ago. Razor, those machine gun positions are going to chew us apart the moment we break cover. Williams said, his voice carrying the calm assessment of someone who understood that professional evaluation of hopeless situations was preferable to false optimism. Jameson nodded, knowing Williams's tactical analysis was accurate but irrelevant. Remaining in current positions guaranteed slow elimination as ammunition supplies reached zero. Movement offered minimal chance of success, but minimal was preferable to none. Above the complex, Elena's crosshairs settled on the enemy machine gunner, who had been systematically suppressing American attempts to establish effective return fire. Disciplined fire control, coordinated communication with other positions, tactical knowledge that marked former military training. This wasn't random resistance. It was coordinated elimination of American Special Operations capabilities by personnel with equivalent professional expertise. Time slowed as Elena's finger applied final pressure to the trigger. 3 years of exile, disgrace, and self-doubt focused into a single moment that would determine whether 22 Americans lived or died in the next hour. The Barrett rifle's report echoed across Devil's Canyon like thunder. The 50 caliber round traversed nearly 2 kilometers of mountain air before finding its target with terminal precision that ended the machine gun's devastating effectiveness instantly. Through her scope, Elena observed the immediate tactical impact. Enemy communications increased in volume and urgency as professional fighters responded to unexpected threat from an impossible direction. Muzzle flashes shifted orientation as multiple positions attempted to locate and eliminate the sniper who had just changed the fundamental equation of their carefully orchestrated trap. "Control, this is Phantom," Elena transmitted while rapidly changing position to avoid counter-sniper fire. "First target eliminated. SEAL team should execute movement now, while enemy forces are adjusting to new threat parameters." In the mining complex, Jameson had witnessed the impossible shot that eliminated their most dangerous immediate threat. Experienced operators didn't believe in miracles, but they recognized tactical opportunities when superior firepower provided temporary advantage. All teams execute breakout now. Jameson commanded rising from cover and leading Alpha team toward the equipment yard in a desperate sprint that exposed them to fire from multiple directions. Chief Sam Wilson coordinated covering fire from Bravo team, his M4 rifle engaging enemy positions with suppressive fire designed to disrupt aim rather than achieve specific kills. Bravo team covering fire on Ridgeline Charlie keep their heads down until Alpha reaches secondary positions. Petty Officer Ben Hughes shouldered his radio equipment while providing covering fire his communications gear, representing the only link between the trap seals and outside support that remained hours away. The radio weighed 37 pounds, making movement difficult, but Hughes understood that losing communication capability meant losing any chance of coordinated extraction. Behind them, Owen Cross and Kyle Brennan carried David Hendricks, whose shrapnel wounds required immediate medical attention that wouldn't be available until they reached safety. Hendricks remained conscious despite blood loss, his rifle ready for engagement, even while being evacuated by teammates who refused to abandon wounded personnel regardless of tactical cost. Almost there, Owen called to Hendricks as they crossed open ground under fire that seemed to come from every direction simultaneously. Just hold on. The sprint to the equipment yard took 47 seconds. Felt like 47 hours. Rounds impacted around them, kicking up frozen dirt and fragmenting concrete. Petty Officer Campbell took a bullet to the leg 10 meters from cover, going down hard. Fisher grabbed him, dragged him the final distance while returning fire one-handed. They tumbled into the equipment yard as a new position, utilizing rusted machinery and waste piles for cover. Better than the main building, but still exposed to elevated firing positions. Elena observed the coordinated movement through her scope while calculating her next target priority. The SEAL team's breakout had created temporary tactical confusion among enemy forces, but professional fighters would adapt quickly. Her intervention had provided opportunity, not victory. Additional precision fire would be required to maintain the advantage long enough for American forces to reach defensible positions. Target selection required instant tactical assessment. Ridgeline Bravo held sniper positions that could eliminate the moving SEALs with precision fire. Structural elimination took priority over personnel elimination when time constraints demanded maximum tactical impact with minimum ammunition expenditure. Range to secondary target, 2,134 meters. Wind compensation increasing due to storm intensification. Target type structural support for enemy observation platform. The second shot from Elena's Barrett rifle eliminated the wooden platform that had provided elevated firing position for enemy snipers, sending 2 hostile personnel tumbling 40 feet down a rocky slope while temporarily disrupting coordinated fire from that direction. Captain Robert Thorne monitored the tactical situation from his command position with growing concern that approached professional alarm. 2 precision shots from impossible range, each eliminating key tactical positions, suggested the presence of an expert marksman operating from concealed positions that his reconnaissance hadn't identified. All positions report status and maintain fire discipline, Thorne commanded through his tactical radio. We have sniper contact from elevated position bearing unknown. Adjust defensive postures accordingly. The professional concern in Thorne's voice reflected 18 months of planning that hadn't anticipated intervention by personnel who weren't supposed to exist in this operational area. His intelligence had accounted for every available American military asset within 300 miles. The sniper engaging his forces represented an unknown variable that could compromise the entire operation. Position 5 reports sniper elimination of Overwatch platform, came the voice of one of his team leaders. Precision fire from extreme range. Professional execution. This is not random civilian interference. Thorne's tactical display showed SEAL team movement towards secondary positions while his own forces struggled to maintain coordinated fire under harassment from an invisible marksman whose capabilities matched or exceeded his own personnel. The tactical mathematics that had guaranteed American elimination were shifting in favor of the trapped forces. All sniper teams locate and eliminate hostile marksmen immediately. This is priority target, all other missions secondary. But Elena had already vacated her first firing position, moving through terrain that offered concealment while maintaining observation of the tactical situation below. Professional sniper doctrine emphasized mobility after engagement, never firing multiple shots from the same location when facing competent opposition capable of coordinated counterfire. Her tactical radio crackled with transmission from Jameson's team as they established temporary positions in the mining complex equipment yard. Unknown friendly sniper, this is SEAL Team 7. Outstanding shooting. Can you provide continued support while we consolidate positions? Elena keyed her microphone while navigating rocky terrain toward her secondary firing location. SEAL 7, this is Phantom. Continuing Overwatch and target engagement. Suggest you prepare for coordinated assault once enemy forces adapt to current tactical situation. Copy Phantom. We owe you our lives. Professional warriors didn't express gratitude during active combat operations, but Jameson's brief acknowledgement carried weight that reflected desperate circumstances and unexpected salvation. The SEAL team had been minutes away from systematic elimination when Elena's intervention had provided tactical breathing room that might extend their survival. But survival and victory remained two different objectives. Enemy forces still maintained numerical superiority, tactical positioning, and coordinated capability that could overwhelm American positions once they adapted to the presence of hostile sniper fire. Elena reached her secondary position and began target assessment for her third shot. Mathematical calculations revealed wind speed increasing visibility, deteriorating and range extending beyond optimal parameters for guaranteed accuracy. But precision remained preferable to volume when ammunition supplies were limited, and target selection could determine the outcome of an engagement involving 22 American lives. Through her scope, she observed enemy forces adjusting their tactical disposition in response to sniper harassment, professional fighters adapting to unexpected threats, maintaining fire discipline while attempting to locate and eliminate the marksman who had disrupted their carefully orchestrated trap. Then her scope caught something that made her pause. On Ridgeline Delta, approximately 800 meters from her position, another sniper was setting up. The distinctive profile of a high-powered rifle, professional movements, someone who knew what they were doing. And his scope was tracking toward the equipment yard where the SEALs had just taken cover. Elena made rapid calculations. She could take the shot. 800 meters. Doable. But it would reveal her exact position to every other enemy sniper in the valley. Before she could decide, her radio crackled with a transmission on a frequency that shouldn't have been accessible to enemy forces. A voice speaking in accented English. American sniper, I see where your friends hide. I have clean shot, but I do not take it yet. Elena's hand tightened on her rifle. Identify yourself. My name is Dmitry Volkov, former Russian Spetsnaz. Now I work for money like many of us. But I have question for you, American Angel. I'm listening. Why do you fight for these men? They are not your unit. Your country abandoned you, yes. Captain Thorne told us about the Marine sniper who was disgraced, who lives alone in mountains. He said you might come. He said you were predictable. Elena's jaw tightened. Thorne had planned for this, had counted on her responding to a distress call despite everything that had happened. My reasons are my own, Elena said. Fair answer, I tell you my reason. My daughter Anya, 14 years old, leukemia, hospital in Moscow says she needs treatment that costs 200,000 American dollars. I take this contract, I earn 50,000. Maybe 4 more contracts like this she lives, maybe. Elena's scope found Volkov again. Saw him looking at something in his hand. A phone probably. Looking at a photo of his daughter. So I must ask, Volkov continued. Are you mother? Do you have children who depend on you? No. Then you cannot understand. When your child is dying, morality becomes luxury. I will kill your friends if it means Anya lives. Not because I hate Americans. Because I love my daughter more than I hate anyone. Elena understood the position he was in. Understood the choice between principles and survival. She'd made similar choices herself. If you take that shot, Elena said quietly, I will kill you before your next breath. I know. I see your position now. Very good, by the way. I almost missed it. You are excellent sniper. A pause. But maybe we both have bad day, yes. Maybe we both die in these mountains fighting for things that matter to other people. Volkov's phone buzzed. Elena watched through her scope as he looked at the screen. Saw his shoulders shake. Crying, perhaps. Then he did something unexpected. He shifted his aim, away from the SEALs, toward a position where Elena knew another enemy sniper was setting up. I cannot do this, Volkov said over the radio. If I kill American soldiers to save my daughter, what kind of father am I? What kind of man does Anya have as example? His rifle fired. The enemy sniper he'd been aiming at dropped. Immediately chaos erupted. Enemy fire concentrated on Volkov's position. He just betrayed his own team. Go now, Volkov transmitted. I buy you time. Tell your soldiers to move while others are confused. Why Uthbandeki, Elena asked. Because maybe one day someone does same for Anya. Maybe this is how karma works, yes. Maybe God keeps score. Elena had a clear shot on Volkov. 800 meters. Perfect angle. One less threat to worry about. She shifted her aim and destroyed his radio antenna instead. Not him, his equipment. Across the valley, Volkov looked up toward her position. For 3 seconds, two snipers stared at each other across 800 meters of mountain air. Then Volkov saluted. Elena returned it. Volkov turned and disappeared into the storm, abandoning his position, his contract, and his team, choosing to walk away from $50,000 rather than kill men who'd done nothing to him. Elena keyed her radio to Jameson. SEAL 7 Phantom. Enemy coordination is fragmenting. One of their snipers just went rogue and took out one of his own. You've got maybe 5 minutes of confusion. Move now if you're going to move. Jameson didn't question the intelligence. Copy Phantom. All teams were advancing to the admin building. This might be our only chance. Elena provided overwatch as the SEALs made their move. She eliminated 3 more targets in rapid succession, enemy personnel who were focused on finding the traitor in their midst rather than watching their sectors. But her shots were drawing attention. Counter-sniper teams were triangulating her position. She had maybe one more shot before she'd have to displace or risk being overwhelmed. Then Thorne's voice came over the enemy command frequency, loud enough that it bled through to the tactical frequencies the SEALs were monitoring. All units, I know who our mystery sniper is. Elena Carter, former Marine gunnery sergeant, disgraced operator who I personally trained. She's predictable because I taught her everything she knows. Thorne paused, then continued with calculated cruelty. Carter, I know you're listening. I want you to know something. Your friend, William Garrison, the old ranger who lives in that cabin 4 miles from yours. My cleanup team paid him a visit an hour ago. He's alive, but he won't be if you don't stand down. You've got 5 minutes to contact me directly or he dies. Your choice, Marine. Save these strangers or save the man who saved you. Elena's world stopped. Garrison, her hands trembled on the rifle. Everything she'd done, every shot she'd taken had been to protect people, to prove she still had value. And now the man who'd given her a reason to keep living was being used as leverage. Control, this is Phantom. Her voice was steady despite the fear tearing through her. Requesting satellite confirmation on civilian casualty at grid reference. Sterling's voice cut her off. Phantom, negative on that intel. We have real-time satellite coverage of Garrison's cabin. He is alive and secure. 3 hostile personnel attempted to breach his location approximately 40 minutes ago. All 3 are down. Garrison is fortified in his basement with adequate supplies and ammunition. This is a psychological operation. Thorne is lying. But doubt gnawed at Elena's mind. What if Sterling was wrong? What if Garrison was in danger because of her choices? Then Garrison's voice came through her radio, weak but unmistakable, labored breathing that suggested pain or injury. Elena, kid, I'm okay. Killed 3 of their boys when they tried to breach my cabin. I'm locked in my basement with enough ammunition to hold until spring. A pause, a wet cough that suggested injury. Don't you dare surrender. Those boys down there need you. That's an order, Marine. You finish this. Promise me you finish this. Elena's throat tightened. Bull, how bad are you hit? Took one to the shoulder. Feel dressed it myself. I've had worse in Panama. Remember what I taught you. Complete the mission. Everything else is just noise. Elena felt tears freezing on her cheeks. Copy that, Bull. Finishing the mission. She turned her scope back toward the valley where Thorne had revealed his position by broadcasting that message. 400 meters. Exposed for just a moment while he coordinated his forces. She could take the shot, end him right now. But she had a better idea. Control Phantom. Patch me through to SEAL 7 Commander on encrypted channel. Stand by. A moment later, Jameson's voice. Phantom Razor, go ahead. Razor, be advised that enemy commander just revealed his position coordinating response to my harassment fire. I can eliminate him, but I have a better suggestion. He's coordinating from a position overlooking the admin building where your actual target is located. If I keep him pinned and distracted, can your team breach the building? A pause as Jameson considered. Phantom, we'd need to cross 50 meters of open ground under fire from at least 3 machine gun positions. Not if I eliminate those positions in the next 60 seconds, but you need to be ready to move the instant the last gun goes silent. No hesitation. Can you do it? Affirmative, Phantom. We're stacked and ready. Elena was already calculating shots. 3 machine gun positions. Each one would require precise placement. Each one would further reveal her location to enemy counter-snipers. This was going to hurt. Stand by, Razor. Targets in sequence, Ridgeline Echo, the bunker at the equipment yard entrance, and the defilade position west of the admin building. When the third one drops, you move. Understood. Understood. Phantom, you're putting yourself at extreme risk for this. That's what we do, Razor. We risk everything for brothers we've never met. Moving to firing position now. Elena relocated one final time to a position that offered sightlines to all three targets but was exposed from multiple directions. If enemy counter-snipers had any skill at all, she'd be taking fire within seconds of her first shot. But 22 Americans were counting on these next 3 shots to buy them the chance to complete their mission. Elena's breathing slowed. Heart rate dropped. The world narrowed to target crosshair wind range. Shot 3 machine gun position, Ridgeline Echo, range 1,900 meters. Gunner eliminated. Shot 4 bunker position equipment yard entrance, range 1,600 meters. Gunner eliminated. Shot 5 defilade position west of admin building, range 2,200 meters. Gunner eliminated. Razor, move now. Elena watched through her scope as Jameson led his team in a desperate sprint across open ground toward the admin building. Then the world exploded around her. Counter-sniper fire impacted within meters of her position. 50 caliber rounds fragmenting granite into deadly shrapnel. She'd been triangulated. Multiple shooters. Professional response time. Elena rolled behind cover as the boulder she'd been using disintegrated under concentrated fire. Grabbed her rifle and scrambled across ice-covered rocks while bullets tracked her movement. Someone very, very good was shooting at her now. She dove behind a larger formation as another 50 cal round punched through the space her chest had occupied a heartbeat earlier. Her radio crackled. Jameson's voice breathless. Phantom, we're in the building, setting charges on the inner door now, taking effective fire, but we're through the first breach. Copy, Razor. I'm a little busy at the moment. That was an understatement. Elena had at least 3 separate sniper teams zeroed on her position. She was pinned. Couldn't move without exposing herself to coordinated fire from multiple directions. This was exactly the situation she'd hoped to avoid. Her radio crackled again. This time Sterling's voice with new intelligence that changed everything. Phantom critical update. The transaction isn't just weapons. SIGINT intercepts indicate Wolf is selling stolen U.S. military nuclear launch codes to hostile buyers. If those codes leave that facility, our entire strategic nuclear posture is compromised. SEAL team must secure those hard drives before Wolf can transmit them off-site. Codes are encrypted, but time-sensitive. Nuclear launch codes. The mission had just escalated from important to catastrophic if failed. Control Phantom, understood. How much time before transmission? SIGINT estimates less than 30 minutes before Wolf's buyer completes transfer protocol. 30 minutes. The SEALs had 30 minutes to fight through a fortified position, secure hard drives containing nuclear launch codes, and extract before enemy reinforcements arrived. And Elena had to keep every enemy sniper in this valley focused on her instead of on the SEALs breaching that building. She checked her ammunition. 7 rounds remaining. 7 rounds to keep professional counter-snipers occupied for 30 minutes. She was going to need a better plan. Elena keyed her radio. Razor, Phantom, be advised your mission objective just changed. You're not just stopping an arms deal. You're preventing the compromise of U.S. nuclear launch codes. Whatever it takes, you secure those drives. Copy, Phantom. Understood. Elena took a breath, then made a decision that violated every principle of sniper doctrine she'd ever learned. Instead of hiding, she was going to draw every enemy shooter directly to her. She was going to become bait. Shot 6 enemy sniper on Ridgeline, Charlie providing overwatch for the admin building. Range 1,847 meters. The sniper dropped before his spotter could identify the source. Shot 7 RPG teams setting up to engage the admin building. Range 1,634 meters. Both gunner and loader eliminated in a 2-second double tap that drew gasps from the SEALs inside. Shot 8 the communications hub antenna on the command building. Not personnel, but infrastructure that would isolate Wolf's forces from incoming reinforcements. Range 2,112 meters through the worst wind yet. The antenna shattered. Enemy radio chatter descended into chaos. Inside the admin building, Jameson's team fought through corridors slick with blood and cordite smoke. Ben Hughes reached the war room first. Hard drives located, 3 units, heavy encryption but intact. Secure them, Jameson ordered. We're leaving in 2 minutes whether this building is clear or not. But they weren't alone. From a reinforced inner office, Harrison Wolf and Robert Thorne made their stand with a dozen remaining mercenaries. The hallway between the SEALs and their target became a kill box. Neither side could advance without catastrophic casualties. That's when Kyle Brennan, barely conscious and against every order Owen had given him, pulled himself to his feet. The young SEAL had injected himself with the last of Owen's combat stimulants, chemical courage that would either save his brothers or kill him. "Kyle, no!" Owen shouted, but Kyle was already moving. The kid charged down that hallway with his rifle blazing, drawing fire from every mercenary position. It was suicide. It was also the distraction Jameson needed. Tony Williams threw flashbangs. Petty Officer Fisher and Chief Wilson flanked right. Jameson went left. And in the chaos, with Kyle taking 7 bullets but staying on his feet through sheer chemical determination, the SEALs overwhelmed the defensive position. Wolf tried to run. Jameson tackled him. Thorne raised his weapon toward Jameson's back, and Elena, from her impossible position behind the frozen waterfall, took her 9th shot, 1,640 meters through falling snow at a target partially obscured by interior walls. Mathematics said impossible. The .50 caliber round punched through the building's exterior wall, through an interior partition, and caught Robert Thorne in the right shoulder, spinning him around and sending his weapon clattering across the floor. Not a kill shot. Lena could have killed him, but she chose not to, because unlike Thorne, she still believed in justice over revenge. Jameson zip-tied both Wolf and Thorne. Owen Park desperately worked to stabilize Kyle Brennan, who had finally collapsed, his body shutting down from blood loss and cardiac strain. "We need immediate dust-off," Owen shouted into his radio. "Critical casualty. Maybe 5 minutes before we lose him." Sterling's voice came back. "Extraction birds inbound. ETA 12 minutes. Weather's clearing enough for flight operations." 12 minutes. Kyle might not have 12 minutes. Elena was already moving down the mountain, abandoning stealth for speed. She covered 2 miles in 18 minutes at a pace that should have been impossible with her gear. When she burst into the admin building, Owen looked up from Kyle's body with desperate, grateful eyes. "Field cardiac procedure." "Ranger trained me," Elena replied, dropping to her knees beside Kyle. "What do you need?" For the next 8 minutes, Elena and Owen worked in perfect synchronization. Manual chest compressions, emergency medications, and the technique Garrison had learned in Somalia, a direct cardiac injection that would either restart Kyle's heart or kill him. The injection went in. Elena continued compressions. Owen monitored vitals. 30 seconds. Nothing. 45 seconds. Still nothing. Then Kyle's chest heaved. His eyes fluttered open. A weak pulse returned. "Welcome back, kid," Owen said, his voice thick with emotion. Kyle's lips moved, barely a whisper. "Did we get them?" "We got them," Jameson said, gripping Kyle's hand. "And you're going home to Katie and those kids. That's a promise I intend to keep." The extraction helicopters touched down moments later. As the wounded were loaded, Owen gave Jameson a quiet assessment. "Hendricks is stable. Shrapnel missed anything vital. He'll need surgery, but he's going to make it. Kyle." Owen paused. "That injection bought him time. If we get him to surgery within the hour, he's got better than 50-50 odds." Jameson nodded, watching as both men were carefully loaded onto the lead helicopter. Harrison Wolf and Robert Thorne were taken into custody separately. Thorne sat in the second helicopter, zip-tied and pale from blood loss, his shoulder wound field-dressed. Owen had stabilized him enough for transport professional obligation, overriding personal feelings. As the rotor spun up, Jameson approached Elena. She sat against a wall, exhausted rifle across her lap. "Ma'am, I don't know how to thank you." "Thank your father's friend," Elena said. "William Garrison. He served with Thomas Reeves in Desert Storm. Your dad saved his life in Kuwait City. Garrison made a promise to watch over you. I just helped him keep it." Jameson's eyes widened with recognition and something deeper. Connection across generations. "Thomas Reeves was my father," Jameson said quietly. "I never got to know him. He died when I was 4, but Garrison sent me letters every year on my birthday. Told me stories about my dad. I always wondered why he never wanted to meet in person." "Survivor's guilt," Elena said. "He felt he didn't deserve to live when your father died saving him. Some debts feel too heavy to ever repay." Jameson reached into his tactical vest and pulled out a weathered envelope. "I found this in my gear before the mission. Garrison finally sent it. 34 years of things he wanted to say but couldn't." He held it up, his hand trembling slightly. "My father's last words were about me, about making sure I knew he died for something that mattered. Garrison kept that promise every single day for 34 years. Elena felt her throat tighten. "He's good at keeping promises." Colonel Sterling's voice came through on Elena's radio. Phantom outstanding work. Intelligence confirms the hard drives contain access codes for multiple classified networks. This operation prevented a catastrophic security breach. Full mission debrief in 72 hours. A pause. And Elena, welcome back. But Elena wasn't listening anymore. She was looking at the mountains, thinking about Garrison, about redemption, about second chances. 4 months later, Elena stood at a podium at the Pentagon, wearing her dress blues for the first time in 3 years. The Secretary of Defense pinned the Medal of Honor to her uniform, while William Garrison, his arm in a sling from the gunshot wound he'd received defending his cabin, watched with pride that transcended words. For extraordinary heroism and technical skill beyond measure. The citation read, Gunnery Sergeant Elena Blackwell's actions directly resulted in the preservation of 22 American lives and the prevention of a strategic intelligence compromise. 42 shots fired, 38 enemy combatants eliminated, 73 minutes of sustained precision fire under extreme environmental conditions, a record that will stand for generations. After the ceremony, Sterling approached Elena with an offer. Joint Counterterrorism Task Force training position. We need someone who can teach the next generation what you demonstrated in those mountains. Elena looked at the medal in her hands, then at Garrison, then back at Sterling. I'll think about it, Colonel, but first I need to go home. I've got a cabin that needs repairs, a mountain that needs protecting, and an old ranger who needs someone to drink coffee with at dawn. She walked over to where Garrison stood with Jameson. The young SEAL commander had flown in specifically for the ceremony. I wanted you both to know, Jameson said. Kyle Brennan pulled through, 3 surgeries, but he made it. He's home with Katie and the kids now. Showed me pictures last week. The youngest just started walking. He smiled. And David Hendricks is back on active duty. The doc said another hour and he wouldn't have made it, but Owen's field work saved his life. Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders. They'd all made it. Every single one. And this, Jameson continued pulling out the weathered envelope, belongs in your hands now, Mr. Garrison. I've read it 100 times. But I think you should know that my father's promise about dying for something that mattered, you honored that promise by living for something that mattered. By being the father figure I never had even from a distance. By teaching me through those letters what it means to be a warrior with honor. Garrison's eyes were wet as he took the letter. Your father was the best man I ever knew, son. I'm just sorry I waited so long to tell you. You told me every year on my birthday, Jameson said. That was enough. The 2 men embraced. Elena watched, understanding that some debts could finally be paid, some promises could finally be kept, and some wounds could finally heal. 6 months later, Elena was teaching advanced sniper tactics at Fort Bragg. 12 students, 4 of them women, sat in her classroom taking notes as she explained the mathematics of extreme range precision fire. A sniper's greatest weapon isn't the rifle, she told them, echoing words Garrison had spoken to her years ago. It's knowing when not to pull the trigger. It's understanding that every shot has consequences that extend far beyond the target, and it's accepting that sometimes the hardest shot to take is the one you choose not to fire. She looked at a photo on her desk. Young William Garrison in Desert Storm standing next to Thomas Reeves. Both of them young, invincible, ready to change the world. One of them would never make it home. The other would spend decades honoring that sacrifice. Elena's satellite phone buzzed, a text from Garrison. Coffee's getting cold, kid. When you coming home? She smiled and typed back, next weekend, and I'm bringing the new Barrett. You need to see the upgrades. Garrison's response, about time. These mountains are getting too quiet. Someone needs to remind them what a real shot sounds like. That evening, as Elena reviewed lesson plans, her secure email pinged with a message that made her pause. Sender unknown, subject blank. She opened it cautiously. Inside was a photograph of a young girl, maybe 14 years old, sitting in a hospital bed and smiling. Hair growing back in soft curls. Color returned to her cheeks. Below it, a single line of text in broken English. Anya is in remission. Thank you for sparing her father. Some debts are bigger than war. If you ever need Dmitry Kozlov, you know how to find me. Elena stared at the message for a long time, remembering that moment in the mountains when she'd had a clear shot on the Russian sniper and chose mercy over the mission. Remembering Garrison's teachings about the warrior's code, about honor transcending nationality or uniform. She typed a simple response. Tell Anya her father is a good man, and tell him that warriors who remember their humanity are the ones who truly win. The response came back within minutes. He already knows. You taught him. Das Vidania, American Angel. Elena closed her laptop and looked out at Fort Bragg's training grounds. Young soldiers learning the craft that had defined her life. Some would face impossible choices. If she did her job right, they'd understand that being a warrior meant more than pulling a trigger. It meant knowing when to show mercy. The mountains of Montana waited. Garrison waited with coffee and stories. And somewhere in Russia, a girl was alive because Elena had chosen to be more than just a killer with a rifle. She had chosen to be a warrior who remembered her humanity. 42 shots, 73 minutes, 22 lives saved, 2 lost in earlier fighting, both wounded brought home alive. But the record that mattered most couldn't be measured in statistics. It was measured in coffee shared at dawn, in lessons taught to the next generation in mercy, granted when killing would have been easier, in promises kept across generations, in letters finally delivered, in debts finally paid. Elena packed her briefcase and headed for the parking lot. The sun was setting over Fort Bragg, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded her of Montana sunsets. Her phone buzzed again. Garrison probably complaining about the coffee getting cold for the third time. But it wasn't Garrison. It was a forwarded message from Sterling. A mission brief. Classified. Urgent. Elena opened it, scanned the contents. A situation developing in Eastern Europe. American personnel in danger. Assets limited. Someone with very specific skills needed. She looked at the brief for a long moment. Then she called Garrison. "Bull, that coffee's gonna have to wait another week. Figured as much when I saw the news. Were they sending you this time?" "Can't say. You know how it is." "I know." A pause. "You come back, kid. That's not a request." "Always do, Bull. Always do." She ended the call and looked back at Fort Bragg, at the training grounds where tomorrow her students would practice the skills she'd taught them. Skills that might save their lives someday. Skills that might help them make the right choice when the moment came. Because that's what warriors did. They trained. They prepared. They served. And when the call came, they answered. Not for glory, not for medals, not even for country, though that mattered too. They answered for the person next to them, for the brother or sister who needed them, for the promise made to someone who couldn't keep it themselves anymore. Elena started her car and headed for the airfield. The mountains would still be there when she got back. Garrison would still be waiting with coffee at dawn. And somewhere people who needed help would receive it from a ghost they'd never see, never know, never thank. That was enough. That was everything. Because some promises were kept in silence, some debts were paid in shadows, and some warriors found their redemption not in recognition, but in the quiet knowledge that they'd done what needed to be done when no one else could. Elena Blackwell, the Phantom, drove into the gathering darkness. Behind her, Fort Bragg faded into the distance. Ahead, another mission waited. And in between, in the space where duty met honor and sacrifice met purpose, a warrior found her way home.